Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be another workplace horror story video. If you guys have not seen my previous one about my ice cream shop job, I will actually link it down below and probably somewhere on this screen. So if you want to go check that out now or after this video, feel free. It's a good one. It's like 3 horror stories. But this video is not from the same job. This is a totally different story, and hopefully I'm able to tell it before my camera dies because I have really low battery right now. I wanted to tell this one because it is a really, really good one, and I still cringe to this day thinking about the fact that I had this job. This is the story of me being a hostess for 3 days. And this took place back when I was still in college. I was, I believe, going to be a sophomore in college, and I had just kind of decided that my ice cream job was not giving me enough money to get me through the summer and into my fall semester every year. And I was just running out of money really quickly as soon as I was getting to school. And then I was also having to spend a lot on back to school clothes and supplies and whatever else I had to buy, books. So I decided that I needed to get a different job to kind of like tack on part-time with my ice cream job. One of my friends, her brother, worked at a restaurant at a town like 20 minutes away from where I grew up, and it's really touristy. And she told me that he worked at this restaurant that had just opened, and that it was super duper popular and always super busy, and they were hiring wait staff and hostesses on for the summer and then like into the winter. So I was really excited about it because I didn't have a job that went into the winter at this point. I just had my seasonal job, and so I would come back on my winter break and I wouldn't be able to work. So I was like, oh my God, this is gonna be awesome. I can get this second job, and then I can have that job for the rest of the time that I'm home when my other job is closed, and it'll give me extra money. And it just seemed like a fantastic idea. So I go in, I get the application for this job, and pretty instantly I'm offered a interview by the manager. And she was probably in her like early 30s, maybe late 20s. She wasn't very old at all. And she seemed overall very enthusiastic about the fact that I was applying. Obviously, this restaurant had just opened like 3 months before, so I was like, okay, well, they must be having some problems getting people to work here or something, or she probably has to like overstaff it because they were so busy. So she just seemed really excited for me to be there. I went in for my interview. She walked me through the position. It was hostessing. They did everything manually, so you had to be able to calculate how long it would take for a table to turn, which means like how long it would take for people to be seated, order, eat, and leave. And there was like certain ways that you had to do that. And so she kind of tested me on that, and I was able to do it pretty easily. And she really seemed to be enjoying the interview with me, and she offered me the position on the spot at the end of the interview. I was stupid and accepted it immediately. I did not even think twice about it. I had already told her that I wanted this job to be part-time, not full-time, because I did have another position at an ice cream shop, and I had been there for several years and whatever. She was completely fine with that, or so she said. She was like, yep, that's no problem. We'll have you come in like 2 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, and you can let your other boss know, and we'll work with you. We'll work with your scheduling, all this stuff. And I was like, this sounds great. So I accepted the job. And she said, okay, I'll give you like a couple days, and why don't you come in on Monday and we'll get you started, and I'll have you come in for a dinner shift. I went home and had to buy a bunch of new clothes because the hostesses had a really strict dress code. You couldn't wear a skirt that was like above your knee at all. You couldn't wear spaghetti straps. You couldn't wear open-toed shoes. They actually suggested that I buy boat shoes because the majority of everyone there wore boat shoes. And for the waitresses, I think it was actually required that they own Sperry's, which if you've ever worn Sperry's, that's like the worst shoe to wear on your feet for 12 hours. But I went in for my first shift on that Monday. So yeah, this is the beginning of the week. It's a Monday. I go in for my dinner shift and there are 2 other hostesses there already. Not even 10 minutes into my first shift, one of the hostesses gets in trouble for what she's wearing. And this girl had been there for like a couple of months. She had been there for a while, and she told us that she had gotten called in last minute, and so she didn't really have really appropriate clothing for the job that day. But the manager, I guess, had been like, no, you need to come in. I need you right now. And so she showed up wearing like a plain white t-shirt, and I think she had on like jeans or something. I don't know. She was dressed out of the dress code, but at the same time, she's like, I really didn't have time to go home and change. I'm automatically freaking out because this manager went from like super duper nice to being really nasty to this girl in like 5 seconds. The manager had told her that if she didn't go home and change right at that moment, that she would be fired. And so she proceeded to quit. She literally up and quit, leaves the restaurant, and so now it's just me and this other girl, and we're gonna call her Morgan. Now, Morgan had been there for 3 months, and she starts to tell me about how they've had like 5 or 6 hostesses before me, and they cannot keep any of their staff for more than like a month. That should have been like, it was a red flag, but at the same time, I was like, oh, this girl is just probably trying to scare me. She was a little bit older than me. So I was listening, but at the same time, I was kind of taking it with a grain of salt because I had just started at this restaurant and everything seemed okay to me in my interview. And so she starts to tell me about all of these things. There was apparently a ton of waitresses that had quit the week before because they were being harassed by the cooks in the kitchen. And they had gone through hostesses like water because they were so busy that there was just no time to train anybody. And so I'm really nervous. I was like, so am I gonna get trained or not? And Morgan was like, well, I'm gonna try my hardest to just like teach you what I know. And she had been there the longest, so I was like, all right, I'll trust you. Because the other girl had quit that night, I ended up having to basically just bring everybody their tables and give them water. And so I wasn't really learning a lot about how to calculate like turning tables and things like that. And Morgan was doing the majority of like the harder work. So I was slightly nervous. I worked like a whole 6-hour shift without really having to like calculate wait times or like figure out like where all the tables were and things. I was literally just being like guided through my night. And so I didn't really feel like I was being trained at all. We didn't take reservations. I was constantly getting screamed at on the phone by people because our wait times were so high. Tourists are just like hangry at 6 o'clock at night and they just wanted to eat, and I had to tell them that we don't take reservations and that I couldn't seat them anytime soon. I was so exhausted after that first shift and really tired of just getting yelled at. And so I was a little bit apprehensive after that first night. People were getting yelled at by the manager left and right. That other girl quit. I was getting screamed at by customers, and it was just a lot. It was very different from my ice cream job, and overall I was like, I'm not being trained, so this is really frustrating. My manager was like, oh, I want you to come in tomorrow for the lunch shift, and hopefully things will have calmed down and we can train you a little bit more. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, I'll give this another shot. I came in the next day and I worked with a different girl. Morgan was not there. Oh, I also forgot to mention that she told me she had been there for 3 months and they had not ever given her a day off. And on the days that she was supposed to have off, they would call her into work all the time. And she would work double shifts without any kind of break whatsoever. And I could not believe that. I thought that was crazy. And she's like, yeah, they totally take advantage of me here. She was the only one that stuck around, and now she felt like trapped at this place. All of this stuff collectively was like sending off signals in my brain like, you should not be staying at this restaurant. But I was just trying so hard to like give them the benefit of the doubt and let everything just go and say, okay, you know, like, I'm just not used to this, like, everything's fine, I'm not being trained, but I'll pick it up, you know, everything will be okay. But it was just pure chaos all the time. I go in for my second day. The girl that I'm working with was also new on that second day. She and we worked really well together, but she said very similar things, that she didn't really feel like she was being trained. We were basically left alone all day at the front, at the hostess stand. The manager didn't really check in with us that much. She was like walking around and would disappear for long periods of time and kind of just would come over and be like, "You guys good?" And we'd be like, and she would just walk away and not really like say anything or do anything. I just felt like we were not being trained. We were just being plunked there and thrown into it, and she was hoping that we would work out, which I think was the problem with the people that she was hiring. She wasn't training them. She was just thinking that they were gonna work. The lunch shift was also really busy, and I, at one point, was told to go and bus a table that 2 people at the bar were waiting for, and the busboy had kind of like disappeared off into nowhere land. We did not know where he was. He was MIA. And the manager came up to me and was like, "Hey, I talked to you about this. This is part of your job. Can you please go and bus that table, since we don't know where the busboy is right now and he's taking a long time?" I was like, "Sure, no problem." So I go in the dining room and I go over to the couple at the bar and I was like, "I'm gonna go bus your table and then I'll bring you right over." And they were like, "Okay, great, whatever." So I go over to this table and I start to clear it off, and I'm walking back to the area where the dirty dishes go, and I see the busboy out of the corner of my eye go over to the table. And he's standing there looking at it really confused. So I think he was wondering like, where did the dishes go? So I see him grab a rag and he goes over and he's cleaning the table. And so I grab some silverware. I go over to the table and I'm putting the silverware down on the table as he's like walking away, and he stops and looks at me so confused. I continue what I'm doing, and he comes up to me and I can like sense that he's there. And I look up, and this kid is probably 14 or 15 years old. He's super duper young. And I hadn't really seen him yet until that moment. And I was like, "Hi, I'm Kaylee," just being all super friendly. And he's looking at me like this. And he goes, "Aren't you a hostess?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Then stop doing my job." This is part of my job description. I was literally told that I would be asked to bus tables if we were super busy, which we were at the time. I was so taken aback by this kid. He was just super rude about it. And I don't really see what the big deal was, considering there was like 4 other tables around us that also needed to be bussed, and he could have easily just been like, "Oh, the hostess is doing it, I'll do another one." I've seen so many hostesses at so many restaurants, you know, bus a table if they're busy, and the busboys do not get offended by that. It was just so bizarre to me why he was so offended. Like, could not believe that. I looked at him and I was just so flabbergasted by this kid, and I said, "Well, this is part of my job description, and you're taking way too long to bus this table, and I need to get those people from the bar to this table right now." And he just rolled his eyes and turned and walked away. So I go over to the manager. I told the manager about what had happened, and I said, "You know, this is part of my job too, I know that, and I have no issue busing a table," but he just yelled at me in the middle of the dining room, like in front of customers. It's not like we were off to the side and he said something in private to me. This was in the middle of the main dining room where everyone is sitting eating their lunch. Kid, no, go back to high school. Go learn some professionalism. That is not how you act in public, in a workplace. No. She said that she was going to talk to him. I don't know if she ever did, because this was my last day at work. 2 waitresses also quit in the 2 days that I was there. And by the end of the day, my manager came up to me and she pulls me aside and she goes, "I think you're really working out nicely here, and I would really like it if you talked to your boss at your other job and asked her if you could cut your hours there." Bitch, what? I am here for a part-time side job, and my main job is my ice cream job that I love very dearly. And this woman was asking me to cut my hours there, despite the fact that I specified with her, no, I need to work part-time. She then proceeds to ask me if I'll come in on that Thursday, so I would have like a day off in between, and then come in on Thursday and work a 14-hour double shift by myself. all day. This would be the third day that I was at work. I'm not trained, I'm getting screamed at by busboys, and now she wants me to be the only hostess working. Apparently Morgan was gonna get a day off. I'm standing there, I don't know what to say to this girl. I just feel so nervous because I didn't want to disappoint her, but at the same time I'm like, I just don't really think this is working out. I didn't want to say that either. I didn't want to up and quit right there. She was a really nice person, but at the same time, and I felt really bad for her because she kept having all of her staff like quit on her, but in reality, she wasn't really managing. She was just throwing people into it and being like, yeah, I need you to work all these hours and I need you to cut time at your other job and I need you to just pick this up, no issue. And that was not communicated to me when I applied for the position and interviewed for the position. It was made out as though I had a training period and I would not be expected to do the full duties until I was comfortable, and that is not what this was. At the time, I was too afraid to say no, so I was like, yeah, like I'll see you on Thursday. And in my mind, I'm going a 14-hour shift by myself, which means no lunch break. What am I going to do? So I went home, I talked to my mom. I lived at home still, obviously, at the time. I talked to my mom and she basically said, you know, they're pressuring you to cut time at your ice cream job, then you really, you know, like this is just gonna continue on and they're gonna continue to make you come in on days you're not supposed to and work extra hours, and it sounds like she wants you to work like way more than what would be part-time. And I agreed with that whole thing. I just did not feel comfortable working by myself on my third day of work with the volume of customers that we had at this restaurant. It was insane. If you've never been to the touristy part of Southern Maine, it is a madhouse. It is a circus, and I did not want to be part of it anymore. So the next day I called the restaurant and I quit over the phone, which I don't ever recommend. Like, I realistically should have gone there and talked to her in person, but I was too afraid to. I did not want her to talk me into anything. She was a very persuasive person. And so I just kind of said to her on the phone that I didn't feel comfortable working a double shift by myself and that I didn't feel that the position was working out. And she was very confused on the phone. She thought that I was a great fit for the restaurant. She was absolutely shocked that I wanted to quit. And she was like, oh, you know, I'll work with you more about your scheduling. We don't have to have you work alone, blah, blah, blah. Like trying to just make up for it, even though I knew that somewhere down the road she was gonna just pull this stuff anyway. And I was like, nope, like I really just want to be done. I'm gonna get more hours at my current job and fix it that way. I asked her if they could send my check in the mail, and they never did. So I never got paid for my hostessing job. I should have also gotten tips from the waitresses because they were supposed to split their tips with us. And I never got a single penny from that restaurant. So that's super illegal. I didn't feel like I needed to give my 2 weeks because I was still in my training period and I'd literally been at this restaurant for 2 days. So yeah, I didn't really feel bad quitting. I had seen so many people quit on the spot. Like I'd literally seen 2 waitresses and a hostess quit in a 2-day time span. And the restaurant actually is closed now. It ended up closing this past year and they were very successful and then all of a sudden they up and closed. So it was very weird. I overall am so glad that I quit. I ended up picking up more hours at my ice cream job and went on to work there for another like 3 years. So yeah, hostessing was not for me. And I'm sure that I would have been able to pick things up so much easier at a like less busy restaurant that hadn't just opened and had terrible management. But yeah, I don't know whatever happened to Morgan. I don't know if she was still there after all these years. I highly doubt it. She seemed pretty worn down from the job and she'd only been there for 3 months. But thank you for the advice for quitting. I'm so glad I took it and recognized that you weren't trying to like screw me over. You were legitimately trying to save me, and I hope you have a good job out there somewhere now. So that is my hostessing story. It's a bit of a jumbled mess and there's probably a million incidents that I like missed, but I didn't want this video to be like crazy long. Let me know down below if you've had any terrible management workplace stories like this one. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up if you want to see more story time videos. I like doing these. They're one of my favorite types of YouTube videos. and make sure that you click the subscribe button. I put out content as much as I possibly can. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!